Namaskaram, Namaste, Vanakkam to all the PGurus audience. I always say that it's a delight to interact with PGurus audience. I thank Iyer for giving the opportunity. Today we will look at the issue of India-China along with USA, this tangle. There is a huge amount of consternation and severe feelings about China's attitude to India, China attacking India, and opposition parties, as usual, are trying to, make government apologetic and on the back foot. They make it appear as if China has taken over all over till Delhi, all the land, and they say that the central government is responsible. Of course, the government side, they have responded telling Congress got huge amount of funds for the RGF, Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, 3-4 years before from the Chinese embassy. Actually, I have been writing about this Rajiv Gandhi Foundation as a 𝗣𝚑𝘀𝘃, what type of funds they are getting, and there doesn't seem to be much of scrutiny on that. Another thing, much earlier, actually, this issue was raised as early as 2011 in the parliament, and that time Selja was the minister. She told she will collect all the information and then bring it. And by the time, the government fell, and after that, there was not much of. So there is a huge amount of funds. Actually, if you recall, after Narasimha Rao took over, one of the first decision was some 100 crore was allotted. There was a hue and cry about it, and then it was withdrawn. That amount is very, very large, it was felt. So, and then there was an MOU signed between Congress party and it's not even a Communist Party of China, it is the official, that is the government of China. There is a question mark about it, what type of MOU, what type of agreement. Anyhow, there is a lot of mudslinging on both the side. The opposition trying to make the government as something which has catapulted or which has completely surrendered to Chinese. And in the process, what is happening? All the TV channels are very happy. Their TRP is going up, and lot of this chauvinistic, or what I would rather call bombastic type of things are told that India will fight China, and if required, we will fight to the finish and all. It's very easy to sort of create this type of noise and make the people. In terms of instigate, I would rather call. In Tamil, there is a nice word for it. Usuparது. You just needle somebody else in order to do these things. And once the people's emotions are increased, like this Maharashtra and Karnataka border dispute, or earlier it used to be the Tamil Nadu and Karnataka Kaveri water, and in all these, it is always very easy to instigate people and rabble rousing and make it appear as if a huge amount of misery has fallen on you and you are oppressed and suppressed, like that. So quite a lot of statements are coming. Some people are telling we will not buckle for Chinese, and so all this is inappropriate, I would call it, actually. And very interestingly, people who feel that New York Times, Washington Post, and all these journals, Economist, Financial Times, much of their coverage of India, people are not happy. People feel that much of it is distorted, not based on facts and other. But about China, the same papers, whatever they write, people take it as gospel truth. This is something I can never understand. When they are making errors on country like India, which is fairly open, whose fault lines are all known, which is completely what one can call open democracy, they distort and then they publish. And in social media, many people point out about this also. But about China, which is relatively closed system, whatever they publish is accepted by the Indian elites, and so that is the first thing. Second is, you see, in 60s, Cuba, which is an adjacent country to USA, which is an island actually country, and Russia wanted to keep some missiles in Cuba. That time, John F. Kennedy was the uh, president of US, and Khrushchev was this side. And there was a hue and cry by US, as if US is completely attacked another thing, and finally Russia has given up that thing. That was a Cuban Missile Crisis, it used to be called. In an adjacent island, some missiles have to be kept. So much was objected. But in the case of Russia, Ukraine, which is a border state, the US wanted it to be integrated into NATO, and all the nuclear weapons and other thing will be given. And so, and they want Russia to keep quiet. And so they have done enough instigation in Ukraine. So there is a huge amount of consternation and ability to practically they want to shoot Russia using the Ukraine shoulders. That's all. There is nothing. And huge amount of arms are given to Ukraine. You see, countries like USA, Sweden, Germany, many of them are dependent on a massive amount of arms production. France, and these arms have to be sold. Many a time they are taken and given it in the wars in Africa between various type of liberation groups and other thing, running war. And there was a time in Angola, it was told both the groups were provided arms by USA. That is the opposition group as well as the ruling group. Both were fighting, both were given the arms, small arms particularly. So the armament industry is extremely enthusiastic about these type of conflicts. Now, what they did in Ukraine, they are trying to do vis-a-vis Taiwan and China. You see, China has got 20 trillion US dollar in terms of its GDP, and in the next couple of years, it is expected to exceed that of USA. Let's be very clear about it. In which case, China will become the number one superpower, which obviously USA cannot digest. And almost all the wars USA started everywhere has not ended in any type of peace or anything. Whether it is Vietnam, whether it is Angola, whether it is Somalia, whether it is Afghanistan, whether Iraq, they told there is a huge number of these nuclear weapons and chemical weapons. And this papers like Economist, New York Times, and others wrote pompous articles about dangers of Iraq, and Iraq was invaded by US, and Tony Blair gave a very fascinating idea of there is no more consensus in terms of non-interference. If required, we can interfere into other people's affairs. Who will decide? We will decide, of course. So they went and they didn't find even a bottle of hydrochloric acid. That country is in a total mess, and the US is not able to bring. Their purpose was not to bring order and uh, development of Iraq. It was just to finish it off because of their intense hatred for that Saddam Hussein. They've invaded Afghanistan. What was the net result? Nothing. Afghanistan is finally run by Taliban who execute women in the public. So there is US interference is not necessarily going to be helpful thing. Incidentally, in Taiwan, in the recent election, local election, the party which is sort of you may call pro-China, or it doesn't want to have significant amount of antagonism toward China, they swept the polls. Actually, the current leader of the ruling party, she has to quit. And these are unnecessary provocation. Nancy Pelosi, who was the Speaker of the U.S. Congress, now she has to step down. She visited Taiwan, which is not called for. Any of one China policy still US is adopting, but at the same time it wanted to use Hong Kong. It did not significantly succeed. It now want to use Taiwan, and it also is interested in using India. Let me be very clear about it. India has got some 3 trillion as its GDP. We are much lower than that of China and USA. USA and China are two big elephants, and they want to fight. I think the grass under the elephant's feet will be crumpled. We should be very careful. We should lie low instead of taking any particular side or anything. And a lot of this propaganda will be created by US, and a lot of media in India will also follow it up. That China has occupied our territory, China has done this, China. Actually, coming to think of it, Hushi was the ambassador to USA from China as early as 1940s. He gave a uh, convocation address, uh, in which commencement they call it, in which he mentioned actually India conquered China without firing a single bullet. In other words, in terms of culture, arts, music, dance, and so many of their visitors came through Burma and then picked up large number of these things. Actually, when Shankar Sheikh, he ran away from China to establish his rule in current Taiwan or Formosa, it used to be called in those days. He had something like, it is told that 12, 13 ships, something like 7 carried material from. If you go to Taiwan even today, you will find out I have been there in the first floor of the huge museum, a complete India-based literature, Indian Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit, all type of things are available there. And that's what appeals for the country, maybe in terms of medicine, in terms of their healthcare, in terms of their music, in terms of their architecture, art, and even within China today, quite a number of places they are opening up in terms of Vishnu in what one can call in his lying posture, Shiv, many places, and these are sometimes people go with agarbatti and then light it up. There is a underlying theme of Buddhism coming back, or Taoism, along with some amount of Hindu culture and other things. Even though everybody thinks that all are not communist in China, let's be very clear about it. So USA thinks that India also will be a good opportunity to provoke China, and maybe they think that India can keep China in. I think that would be extremely folly on our part to fall for such tricks. I remember Henry Kissinger allegedly made an interesting statement that to be enemy of USA is a very dangerous thing. To be friend of an USA is fatal. This is what he mentioned. It's a friend of USA is not a very nice thing. Anytime you get hit or anytime, that's what many of the European countries are facing today. Even France is having its difficulties and other things. And US is a declining power. Let's be very clear about it in terms of its global reach, in terms of its global economic power and other thing. It is declining. And declining powers, let me repeat 150 times, are dangerous powers. It's not going to up its position very easily. It's going to be a very big and a very long duration battle in order to unseat it from the main dining table. European countries are all just, they have got their own problem in terms of the Islam issue in Europe. So this is the type of a global configuration. We say it's an Asian century, in which case it's the century of India and China. So the whites area is over. Now it's yellow and brown. After that, blacks will may be coming. That's a cycle. 200 years of white rule is whoever is ruling the world. So now the yellow and brown. And yellow and brown, if it has to conflict with each other, it will benefit the white only. I think. I'm not telling that even an inch of territory should not be given to China. And let me be very frank, I don't think they're enthusiastic in taking away all our land or anything. For roughly 2000 years, we have been neighbors, except 1962 and this recent Gulf War. There has not been any major conflict between the countries. No kingdom. Of course, Tibet was there in between. Even then, no major kingdom from China walked into India, or no major Indian kings tried to go there. And so the relationship was more cultural, relationship was civilizational, relationship was based on, as I told, significant amount of common interest. Some of the very elderly Chinese I have met I have been to China several times. They feel that being born in India is the only thing which can give them moksha, because they associate Buddha to have been with even though it's a Indo-Nepal type of a situation, but they have an enormous amount of goodwill for India. I think we should be very cautious. We should protect our interest 100%. There is no compromise or anything. But we should look at our own interest. We should not fall a prey to anybody else's, what one can call. We are not going to be gatekeeper for other people's problems or other people's issues. It's like now, for instance, we are getting oil from Russia. Significant amount of Europe is still getting gas from Russia, but they are making it appear as if India is committing a major crime. India has to take care of itself. As I think our foreign minister nicely enunciated, Europe thinks their problem are global problem, and Europe also thinks other people's problem are not their problem. This cannot be sustained. And many of them still think that countries like India, China are all colonies, which is a very, very sad state of affairs. They have to be told at some point of time that we are not colonies. In the long run, having a good relation with our civilizational and cultural commonality neighbor is extremely important. And also, we should not fall prey to the tactics of these declining powers in order to use us for their own ends. This is extremely important. And third is, it's very easy to be a rabble rouser and go on a big, what one can call, binging against the Chinese expansion, and all sorts of things are being talked. And these channels and media don't have any responsibility or something. They are very interested in TRP. For them, everything is a major source. And they also claim they are the first one to tell. Somebody says, we told it at 8:01 p.m. And somebody else says, no, we told it at 8 p.m. As if, these are, and they say, our man is in Tawang. He is in ground zero. What does it matter? He just stands there. And so there is a enormous amount of instigated chauvinism. Some of it, I am very, very sure, are encouraged by the US forces. US Pentagon is extremely enthusiastic about a conflict between India and China, because this will help them to sell their missiles to India, sell their thing, and it will also help them to see that both the countries are in no way trying to compete or be becoming a global power. That is their aim. If countries like India and China are in conflict, that is the best solution for Europe and US in order to continue to sit in the main dining table. And I think we should fall into that trap. We should, cultivate our relationship, and we should create 50 centers. I have always been telling, to learn about China. Our knowledge of China today is through New York Times and Washington Post. That's not a desirable thing at all. We should have independent knowledge of China. We should have Chinese study centers. And there is one Rashtriya Raksha University. I hope they take it up on a large scale to create a huge number of scholars who are independent of Western lens, understand China. Thank you very much.
Thank you.